this time with purple as the predominant colour. Even the tail head thing doesn't change its colours too drastically, which is nice. It looks pretty good, so I'll applaud these apparitions for not ruining their appearance. For some reason, the original rabid dog has one of the cleanest render images of any of these Heartless. Weird. Anyway, yeah, it's a dog that's gone rabid. Look, which is nice. It looks pretty good, so I'll applaud these apparitions for not ruining their appearance. For some reason, the original rabid dog has one of the cleanest render images of any of these Heartless. Weird. Anyway, yeah, it's a dog that's gone rabid. Look, there's only so much I can do, okay? Well, I'll say those yellow eyes intersected by a spiral is interesting. Don't see that too often. It fits fairly well in Olympus, you know, with Cerberus and all. Gotta say, I hate the yellow and purple collar in Final Mix. The dog becoming red is fine, whatever, but yellow and purple are opposite colours, which means they clash very easily, and they sure do here. It's just another pointless downgrade, but not an especially harmless one, fitting for this less than threatening canine. Honestly, I didn't even realise the minute bombs had received a recolor until I made this video. I guess the most prominent change is the fuse becoming red. The original bomb was perhaps more classically bomb-like. Bomb. Oh, and there's a Timeless River version too for some old-timey demolitions. The hammer frame looks like it doesn't know how it ended up in a situation, and I kind of sympathise. But at least I don't have to wear a big hammer suit that would definitely cause spinal issues down the line. I don't like the blue on the end of the shoes. That feels unnecessary, but other than that, the original has my vote. The Iron Hammer, it's just another recolor with the addition of a random black line down the body. Colours, they're a thing. This one's a bit drab, to be honest. The aeroplanes can be a little annoying to fight at times, but they're not as bad as the damned air soldiers from KH1. While these are less irritating to fight, I think the design is kinda meh. I mean, it's an old-fashioned pilot guy in a dinky little aeroplane that's not exactly blowing anyone away. At least the recolor is okay. I don't have anything bad to say about it. And yeah, aeroplane is what we use in the UK, as opposed to airplane. So I guess we can claim this Heartless. Colonization time, baby. The hot rods were originally intended for the Cars world, but after realizing that Lightning McQueen was too powerful to paint KH2, the devs migrated these vehicles to the Timeless River. Queen, baby. The hot rods were originally intended for the Cars world, but after realizing that Lightning McQueen was too powerful to paint KH2, the devs migrated these vehicles to the Timeless River instead. They're infamous for being one of the few Heartless you can't just spam X to defeat, so you actually have to think a bit, which scares people. These used to be blue, which I think you only ever saw in the Colosseum, but Final Mix did a Rolling Stones and painted it black. I'm conflicted because this makes them pretty similar to the Timeless River variant, but I also like black, so I don't know, make up your own mind about this one. I like the hood ornament being the Heartless emblem, and the lights looking like eyes when it's upright, that's cool. Then we have the Mad Ride, which is just a garish flame-patterned car belonging either to a kid's Hot Wheels collection or a man suffering his midlife crisis. I'd hope that in 20 years' time I'd at least have a little more taste. Port Royal really lives up to the idea of being a pirate world by stealing most of its Heartless from elsewhere. I mean, there's a lot of focus on the pirates themselves, then there's the air pirates, and most of the others are in other worlds too. All I can really attribute to this world is the cannon gun, the Tchaikovsky of the Heartless world. Just like the bat and the dog, this one went from blue to red, are in other worlds too. All I can really attribute to this world is the cannon gun, the Tchaikovsky of the Heartless world. Just like the bat and the dog, this one went from blue to red, which could be good or bad depending on your country and political beliefs. There's a space paranoid green variant too, and this brings us nicely onto the camo cannon, which is also green, but patterned with a camouflage print. What do you mean you can't see it? It's oh, huh, it really has disappeared. It's so... It's okay that I lump these two together, right? I mean, neither have variations or recolors, and to be honest, I wonder what the team was smoking if they...
Cashmere is one of the most sought-after fibres in the world. Its fine hairs are softer, lighter, and can be up to 3 times more insulating than sheep wool. It's been a prized material for centuries, but its quality comes at a cost, and a luxury cashmere jumper could cost you well over $500. So why is it so expensive? Cashmere doesn't come from a sheep, like you might think, but from the Kashmir goat. These goats are found across the Himalayas, where temperatures can drop to -30 degrees, and their freezing cold habitat means they grow an incredibly thick, warm coat. It's not the outer hair you can see that's used for making garments, but the super soft coat just underneath it. Johnston's of Elgin has been making cashmere products since 1851, and to do that, they need a lot of goats.
We are using the cashmere from about 1.2 million goats. And those goats are spread right over out of Mongolia, China, a little bit in Afghanistan as well.
There's a reason so many goats are needed. While a sheep can produce at least 3 kilos of wool each year, a cashmere goat will only give you around 200 grams.
So basically, this much cashmere from every goat. For a scarf, we could be working with the production of a single goat, but for a jumper, for example, you could be working with 5, 8, 10 goats worth of cashmere.
Because of the tiny amount each goat produces, the supply is severely limited, and the fibres can only be collected once a year. While sheep are sheared for their wool, cashmere goats are usually brushed to remove the soft hairs that molt in the spring. Even when you've harvested the fibres, the usable weight halves once it's been stripped of grease, dirt, and thicker hairs. And despite its popularity, cashmere still only makes up 0.5% of the world's total wool production. Cashmere limited.
Cashmere.
Because of the tiny amount each goat produces, the supply is severely limited, and the fibres can only be collected once a year. While sheep are sheared for their wool, cashmere goats are usually brushed to remove the soft hairs that molt in the spring. Even when you've harvested the fibres, the usable weight halves once it's been stripped of grease, dirt, and thicker hairs. And despite its popularity, cashmere still only makes up 0.5% of the world's total wool production. Once you have the pure cashmere, processing it takes a lot of work. The fibres are first dyed to the right colour and aerated to stop them clumping together. Cashmere's softness means that it needs to be treated delicately throughout the whole process. Any chemicals or overprocessing will damage the fibres. The fibres are then carded, a process that detangles and lines up the hairs in thin sheets so that they can be spun into a yarn. The quality of cashmere is graded on its fineness and its length, and a high-quality individual cashmere hair can be as thin as 14 micrometers. When it's finally ready, this dyed and spun yarn can then be used to make everything from jumpers to scarves.
When you're making a cashmere scarf, everybody thinks this is the most simple product in the world, and of course when they come to the mill and they see how it's actually done, they realise actually there's a huge amount to it, and there's an awful lot of hands and skilled work that goes into making that possible. So it is absolutely about the knowledge of the people, about the skills of the people, how you nurture this really delicate fibre through the process.
Cheaper cashmere products have become hugely popular recently. These claim to offer the quality of cashmere for a lower price. Some may use a slightly lower grade of cashmere, or different processing methods to make the end result more affordable. And while they are comparatively cheap, they're still usually at least twice the price of wool. There have been extreme cases of mislabeling too, and some supposedly 100% cashmere products have been found to contain yak hair or even rat fur. If you do find a really cheap product that claims to be cashmere, it may be too good to be true.
There is nothing in the world like cashmere. I mean, there are other precious fibres, there are other fine fibres, but cashmere has great properties. It's very strong, it is very warm, it's very soft, and you can make from it anything from a very thick, robust, almost rug-like product through to very fine, wispy, cloud-like, very, very
Слушай,
supple
а нельзя сделать это? Он просит, ну ладно.
pieces. There are other precious fibres out there. There are other fibres that are as fine, but we can't do as much with them.
Нет, да нормально. Прямо убивал.
Меньше чем через 24 часа у вас на счету будет $1000. а потом $1000 в день на протяжении всей жизни. Всего за 5 минут. Множество людей уже проверили этот метод. И он на 100% безопасен. Сейчас я покажу вам, чего смогли добиться те, кто только вчера присоединился к моей команде. Каждый заработал больше $1000. Даже лучше. Средний доход составил в районе $2198. Это как минимум $365 тысяч в год. И для этого требуется всего 5 минут времени. И задайте себе один простой вопрос. Вы хотите получать $1000 в день? Вас это устроит? И если вы серьезно можете ответить «да», тогда добро пожаловать.
If you want to achieve better results, make a great impression, and save time at work, you should get Grammarly.
With Grammarly, it's like I have my own personal editor on every email or message or essay that I write, and it's free to download.
Before I got Grammarly, I could sense that people didn't understand what I was trying to communicate in my emails. I was too wordy. Now, I get my point across clearly. I catch embarrassing grammar and spelling errors before I hit send.
I'm very straightforward, so the tone suggestions help me make sure that I'm not unintentionally coming across too harsh.
I got Grammarly. It took 2 minutes to set up, and instantly I could see it making my writing better everywhere I type.
It helps me make my messages clear and crisp and just overall more effective. Imagine what would happen if everything you wrote was a little bit better. All those small improvements really add up over time.
If you don't have Grammarly, try for free today. Argan oil can cost as much as $300 per litre, making it the world's most expensive edible oil. Just 20 years ago, however, the production of argan oil was isolated to local villages in Morocco, with international sales virtually non-existent. But since then, the formation of women-run cooperatives has transformed the production into a billion-dollar industry. So why has argan oil suddenly gained such popularity, and what makes it so expensive? Argan oil is predominantly used in high-end cosmetic products and Moroccan cuisine. The oil comes from the seed of the argan tree, native only to the narrow strip of semi-desert between Morocco's Atlantic coast and the Atlas Mountains. The Amazigh people of North Africa have been using the argan seeds for centuries, and the methods for creating this costly oil haven't changed in years.
الحالة الأولى ديال الإنتاج منين يعني كان دابا حنا كنجمعوا أفياش كنجمعوا هاد الحبة ديال الأرغان كنجمعوه ملي تيكمل النضج ديالو يعني في الأول كيكون على هاد اللون هذا كيكون خضر ما يمكنش لينا أننا نجو مثلا نضربوه بالعصا ولا نجنيوه في الشجرة كنخليوه حتى كيطيح في الأرض وكيرجع في واحد اللون اللي هو بني.
Once collected, the argan fruits are sun-dried before being peeled and depulped by hand to remove the fleshy outer layers. The leftover argan nut then needs to be cracked to retrieve the oil-rich kernel inside.
وهذه كتبقى هي المرحلة الصعيبة ماشي سهلة ماشي أي واحد يجي ويهرس هاد الحبة هذه لأن خص تكون عندك واحد التقنية في الطريقة ديال التهريس ديالها باش تحاول تحافظ على هاد اللوزة ما خصهاش تهرس لينا باش يعني نحصلوا على أي لتر ديال الارغان تقريبا كناخذوا واحد 40 كيلو من هذا الحب هذا باش اللي كيعطينا تقريبا واحد 20 كيلو من هذه النواة.
The next stage is grinding, which is often also done by hand.
يعني كنطحنوا اللوزات ديال الارغان بهذه الطريقه التقليديه اللي لقينا اجدادنا ومعروفه في التراث المغربي ديالنا. هذه الطريقه هذه كتاخذ منا واحد الوقت، التراث المغربي ديالنا هذه الطريقه هذه كتاخذ منا واحد الوقت يعني باش نحصلوا على واحد لتر كيخصك تقريبا ساعتين.
They'd recolored these two. But yeah, they're pretty cool. Well, one is cool, the other is hot, I guess. I don't know, I'm not into little magma blobs. All I know is I want to put one of these in my drink, and that the other one looks like it has a moustache. Apparently bandits alone weren't good enough for Cage 2, so instead we have the Lunar Bandits. They're a nice looking addition though, more so the original colours, which keep a little more consistent. You see those Lunar Bandits from Agrabah? They've got curved swords. Curved swords. Lastly of this Arabian assortment is the Fortune Teller, probably the most dangerous Heartless here. These have a rather feminine design, and are full of ice magic, unlike real-world Fortune Tellers which are full of shit. It's a pretty elegant design, and I like that they ride around on a crystal ball. Both versions are good in my opinion, and they make me think of those pink and white marshmallows which are just so good. First of a double act of Halloween Heartless is the Toy Soldier. It's a jack-in-the-box with a fake Heartless face in the front. Sometimes this jack is a knife and axe wielding pumpkin maniac, and sometimes it's the Christmassy toy soldier from which it gets its name. The final mix version swapped all of the colours around, but I consider it a light demotion for this soldier. The more overtly Halloween counterpart is the Graveyard. The pumpkin form is still there, but the box has a different style, and instead of a toy form, we have a tombstone. This one's somewhat intricate, ghosts fly around to damage you, and there's even a little crow on top of the gravestone. I like that detail. I also like the final mix recolor, the black, white and yellow theming actually works quite nicely. So I only saw these two pictures of Halloween versions of the Toy Soldier and Graveyard, and only for the original colours. I don't know, they're clearly more rugged. It's just funny that these are the only pictures. Maybe they're too spooky for us. Ah, finally, here's the aerial knockers I mentioned earlier. Stop giggling at the back of the class. These are simply birds with crazy eyes, wings on their heads, and boxing glove fists. You know, the usual. One thing I like about these is actually a mechanical point, which I know this video isn't about, but let me indulge just a second. See, their press triangle to win reaction command is only doable as furry Sora, which means normal Sora has no chance at cheesing them, except for something like Reflect or Magnet, but you know. As far as recolor goes, it's fine. Honestly, I'd take either one, although the red gloves stand out a little more, I suppose. Oh god, there's still 30 hearts to go. Why do I do this to myself? Alright, you can do this, Nova. Here's the aerial champ. Champ as in boxing champ. Champion. It's rather more fancy than the knocker because the Cavern of Remembrance is an exclusive club. Oh fuck, I just broke the first rule of Cavern of Remembrance Fight Club. Here we have Dem Bones, Dem Bones, Dem Living Bones. It's a skeletal dinosaur Heartless, which is a cool concept, although I'm surprised they straight up used a dinosaur for a world which could have had any number of non-extinct animal Heartless. Not a complaint. In fact, I prefer this more creative approach. Ignore the Shaman on top, we'll get to those. The recolor is okay, but I prefer my bones to look like bones, and the orange and black is straying a bit too far from the idea, I think. In classic Heartless fashion, it has an extra face, this one on the end of its bony tail. Rounding out our Pridelands trio is the Shaman, which resembles a magical masked monkey. A nice detail is how they hold the staff with their tails, I like that. Many primates make good use of their tails, and sometimes I wonder what life would be like if we'd kept ours. But back to the game, this is a pretty wacky design regardless of version, but I think the white mask against red does pop a little bit more. The Cavern version of the Shaman is the Necromancer, although there's no dinosaur bones to resurrect here, so if anything these guys are worse at their job. We've had plenty of soldiers, knights and warrior Heartless in this game, and the last of these is the Arbor Knight. This one really does speak for itself. It's a classic style knight with pauldrons and a sword, and even has these thin pointy feet, which seems like a design flaw to me. Then again, these guys are complete fodder, most notably being the bulk of the 1000 Heartless fight. There's a Halloween variant, but otherwise no recolor here. I guess it's a similar situation to the rapid thrusters. Accompanying the knights are these surveillance robots, or watchers as they're called in days. This Heartless is becoming more and more relevant as our technology progresses, which is an uncomfortable thought. Maybe Disney will use this design when they take over the world and monitor us to make sure we're all subscribed to Disney+. It sure looks like a robot, and like the knights, it didn't get changed in Final Mix. Hollow Bastion's magic class, the Bookmaster, is one of those few KH2 enemies that actually puts up a bit of a fight, mainly because they're immune to most magic. It's this little floaty mage guy with a book named the Akashic Record, which Goofy can get. Apparently this is based on some mumbo-jumbo spiritual thing about a record of events and thoughts of all living entities. I don't know. I lost focus after reading a few sentences on Wikipedia. It's quite a niche reference to include, I'll say that much. Anyway, in Final Mix, the book cover becomes purple, and the book reader is now yellow, which would be fine, but it's that purple-yellow combo again. There's a funky red Space Paranoids version, and also a more powerful counterpart, the Rune Master. This one took a page from my book, it seems, as it's got the most muted colours of the three. The Morning Star is a bit greedy, and that's not a point about its size, no. I mean that it has two Heartless emblems instead of one. Oh, the name is a clear reference to a Morning Star mace, which they resemble. I like that they can retract their arms and replace them with two, well, these are Morning Stars too, I guess. This Heartless truly lives up to its name. Honestly, I do think it's a clever design, and one of the better weapon-based Heartless in the series. I like both colours, and considering how many blue Heartless were changed in Final Mix, at least this puts some blue back into the mix. We're inching ever closer to the end of this video, but first up are the Space Paranoid Heartless. Tucked away in their digital world, they managed to avoid any recoloring. First up is the Strafer, which moves side to side around Sora, aka it strafes around him. Like Popeye, it has some thick forearms, and in fact the Japanese name for these is Eraser, which is also fitting for these nerdy computer Heartless. The Strafer's not the only one with a changed name. In Japan, this Heartless is known as Magna Rhoda, which I read is a reference to an enemy in Final Fantasy VI. Those are also motorized, but look a lot more menacing than the Disney game equivalent. That does make sense though. And it's kind of cool that these guys are a double reference, one to a Disney movie, Tron, with the light cycle, and then also a Final Fantasy reference. It's pure Kingdom Hearts. Now over here they're named Magnum Loader, which works well enough I suppose. It's easy to see why we don't have any Final Mix changes, because we have 5 different colours already. The reds are the common enemies you fight in the field, and the others all belong to the light cycle minigame. Ooh, that was quite a lot of trivia for such a simple Heartless, huh?
Чтобы стать богатым, я трачу 20 минут в день. И вы сможете также. Здравствуйте, меня зовут Валеев, я интернет-предприниматель и инвестор. Первый свой миллион рублей я заработал, когда мне было 19 лет. К 24 годам я увеличил свой доход в несколько раз, и все это благодаря тому, что однажды я решил, что не хочу прятать деньги под подушкой или класть их на депозит. Я хочу, чтобы мой доход увеличивался, и при этом мне не нужно было работать с утра до вечера, пытаясь дотянуть до следующей зарплаты. Я проходил множество курсов, тренингов, изучал книги, нанимал преподавателей. И результат не заставил себя ждать. На все это у меня ушло несколько лет, но вам будет куда проще, потому что все, что я знаю и умею, все материалы, наработки, чек-листы, видеоуроки, я собрал для вас в один большой бесплатный марафон, который называется «Как заработать первые деньги на инвестициях». Приходите и вы узнаете, что такое инвестиции и как они помогут вам увеличить доход. Как за короткий срок составить стратегию.
One of the most infamous Heartless in KH2 is the Devastator, which harkens back to the days of KH1 where 3 powerful Heartless together could pose quite a threat. Of course, Reflect is always there to save the day, but I respect these tanky dudes a lot. At first I wondered why there's 3 H's surrounding the turret, but it's gotta be H for Heartless, right? Or maybe they're just wrestling fans. I like that they have 2 forms, and it's clever to use the turret for levitation in flight form. Again, it's a different name in Japan, with these translating as Terminator. I suppose here in the West that name's already too well known. I'm very glad they didn't mess with this classic purple design. Just like the Terminator that we know, these Heartless are back, with a Cavern variant known as Reckless, and are predominantly red and yellow. I like these too, and at least they don't replace the original. As a general point about the Cavern versions actually, while they don't exactly need to exist as separate Heartless, you could just buff the original ones and stick them in there, at least they don't overwrite the original colours. It's time to look at KH2's offering of magical, musical, cone-shaped Heartless. This time around they're a little less classical, both musically and in design. First up is the Silver Rock. We're off to a good start with my favourite genre here. This one is the most similar to its KH1 ancestors, with a simple, small silver design and a few stripes on the hat. The game continues to show good taste in music with the Emerald Blues. Plus we have a little play on words. The Heartless body is a kind of bluey green, turquoise I suppose. There's also a moody blues version for Halloween Town, and some kind of synth blues for Space Paranoids, but I've never heard of that genre. Then there's also a Cavern of Remembrance variant known as the Spring Metal. It's another great genre of music, but I gotta say, I don't see how Spring is a fitting name, considering this Heartless is just straight up blue and white. I guess it's a bit of a maverick and defies conventions. Maybe it should be Spring Punk instead. Lastly in this lineup is the much maligned Crimson Jazz. It's the biggest of this family and certainly the most dangerous. The Crimson is definitely accurate, and it's got a fire pattern at the base to represent its abilities. Certainly not a smooth jazz though, this guy's caused a lot of pain for a lot of people. All in all, naming Heartless after rock, blues, metal and jazz is maybe one of the best things KH2 did. Our final normal Heartless enemy is the bulky vendor. Not really an enemy because it's a non-attacking Heartless that gives prizes. The design is overtly a capsule vending machine and not a whole lot more. In Final Mix these changed from red to blue, that's whatever, but what I don't like is the ball prizes changing. They're all on the colder side of the spectrum, and I don't know, I think it looks less appealing. There's a decrepit Halloween Town version on offer too, but I feel like you'd get tetanus if you touch this. Before we move on to bosses, let's not forget about the Final Mix added Mushroom 13. After all, if the Nobodies can have a black coat wearing organisation, then it's only fair the Heartless.
Наоборот, да, как я сам. Ну, хаос просто,